Welcome, brave souls, to the chilling depths of horror in detail. Today we are going to share Dogman encounter horror stories. First story. Dogs don't walk like that. One night my wife and I were headed home from a friend's house who lives in our same neighborhood. Small get-together. We said our goodbyes around 1 a.m. and we got in the car to drive the couple of blocks back home. Street lights are few and far in between in our neighborhood, so what we saw next was mostly by the light of my wife's headlights, but clear enough to leave us confused and awestruck. As we turn on our street, we both see something crossing road, maybe 10 yards ahead. An animal/creature that would have been bigger than a large dog, but smaller than a bear. It had pitch black fur, so dark it contrasted an already dark background. The most disturbing detail was its gait/trot. The only way I can describe its movement is by saying it moved the way a bipedal being would move if forced to walk on all fours. But it moved quickly, athletically even. The creature darts across the street from the side where our house is to the opposite side. We live in the suburbs. Each house is surrounded by connected fences. There are no gaps in between them. The fences are at least 6 feet tall. When we pulled up to our house and looked across the street, the animal was nowhere to be found. The only thing I could think was that it would have had to clear a 6-foot fence to get away, or have the dexterity/intelligence to open the gate on the side of my neighbor's house, which is normally locked. We just sat there and both asked each other if we had seen the same thing. I haven't seen anything like it since. I listened to a podcast recently where the co-host mentioned an eerily similar animal, down to the weird bipedal on all fours movement, and said he believes it was a skinwalker. Has anybody encountered anything similar? Second story. Wolf who walked like a human. This happened a few years back. I was visiting the U.S. because my cousin was graduating from college. I don't want to say where exactly, but this happened in the state of Arizona. I promised that I would arrive a night before his graduation to help him put the house in party condition. I arrived on a pretty late flight, and I didn't have my own car, so my cousin came to pick me up from the airport. It was about 2 a.m., and we were driving on a long road that was basically in the middle of nowhere. I was about to fall asleep, but my cousin woke me up and said that there was a wolf right in front of us next to the road. I had never seen a wolf in the wild before, so it was a little exciting. Just when we were about to drive past him, he stood up and started running with only 2 feet. He was running right next to our car for about 5 seconds, and when we looked at him again, he looked like a human who was wearing animal fur on his upper body. After telling this story to others, they told me that we saw a skinwalker. What do you guys think? Has anyone else experienced something like this? Third story. Weird creatures spotted in Minnesota. Hello, everyone. I'm reaching out because of an event that happened last night. I need help figuring out what my mother and I saw. I moved to Minnesota about 6 months ago. It's a pretty cold state. More or less, I love it here. It's very peaceful, and when it snows, it's really beautiful. However, my image of Minnesota was changed last night. Me, my mom, and my stepfather were all sitting down watching a movie in the living room. As the movie was about to end, we paused it because my mom wanted to go smoke, and I had to use the restroom. Once I'm back from using the restroom, I go and sit down with my stepdad. A few seconds later, my mom opens the patio door and yells for us to get out there. We rush outside, and she tells us that she started hearing the noise of something big walking in the snow. When she started to look around for where the noise was coming from, about 40 feet away was a white trailer. She said that when she looked over there, she saw something with red eyes staring at her. She said that it looked like a really big dog. At first, my stepdad said that it was probably a coyote. Then I started to think on how my mom heard a coyote walking in the snow 40 or 50 feet away. I realized that it had to have been something very big. I've always been one to believe in paranormal things. My mother, not so much. We look around for a bit longer, then we go back inside. A few hours later, I leave my room to go grab a soda so I can continue playing Halo. After the whole event, I've had this unshakable feeling. So I decided to just look outside to reassure myself that she was seeing things. As my eyes scan the edge of the woods, I don't really see anything. I take a deep breath and I grab the soda and close the fridge. As I close the door, I glimpse out the window and freeze. Sure enough, I see a pair of red eyes peering at me through the trees. I couldn't see much because of how dark it was. It was around 3 a.m., but I know what I saw. I saw something that I've never seen before. Those red eyes went right through me. Then as quick as I had seen them, they disappear. What did I see? Fourth story. Dogman or werewolf. I recently seen a post on Facebook of a journalist talking about two boys who seen a creature in the county next to the one my family lives in. It got me thinking about a story that happened to my aunt before I was born. My aunt had told me, and anyone that asked this story, and no matter what, her story never changed ever. She stood on what she saw was real, even if no one believed her. One night, she and her boyfriend were driving down the road and were coming up on a railroad track. When they got closer, they saw an 8-foot-tall creature standing on the side of the road. I always remembered her saying it had glowing eyes. Weirdly enough, she always thought it had kind of smirked at her when they drove past. It didn't chase them, try and do anything. It just stood there staring and watching them as they drove past. She had always described it as looking just like the werewolf from Van Helsing. This was before she married my uncle, and I think that experience of hers brought them closer because he had an experience of his own as a child. When he was a kid, he was walking home. At this time, he lived in the country. I'm talking maybe 200 ppl live in this area. I also used to live here, just so you can get an idea of how he felt being the only person outside at this time. He also saw an 8-foot-tall creature that scared him to death. He ran all the way home and busted through the door. He told my grandma what he had saw, and I'm not sure if my grandma believed him or not at the time. I asked her when I got older, and she said he was so terrified that whether she saw it or not, he still saw something that scared him that badly. A few years ago, my uncle started getting into listening to scary stories when he came across the Dogman. He has listened to every type of cryptid story on YouTube, and the Dogman is the only one he wholeheartedly believes is true. Fifth story. There is something in my forest. For context, I'm a 27-year-old woman. My boyfriend and I were able to purchase 15 acres of land this year, right next to a national forest in the Carolinas. It has always been my dream to live in a forest on a mountain, and we were so excited when we found the land. It was priced so low and is a 5-minute drive from the lake, so we of course grabbed it up as fast as we could get the loan approved. We put a small mobile home in the middle of the property where we currently live while we have our home built about 3 acres away. There isn't much built now, just a cement slab and a few metal beams and roof. It's going to be a barn dominium. Now onto the story. We moved onto the land in late May, and everything seemed great. A few weeks ago, I started taking my 2 dogs out for walks around the forest to check where the property lines were and also just to enjoy the scenery, as it truly is beautiful. We got to where the property line ended and the national forest began, and I wanted to go further in as I knew there was a trail you could take nearby that leads to the top of the mountain and a rest area where I planned to call my boyfriend and have him come get me and the dogs. The actual hike itself might take about 1.5 hours, and there's a road the rangers take to get to the top that he could drive up. We were about halfway to the trail, or so I thought, when my German Shepherd Crush takes off into the woods barking. He's usually very well trained and comes when called, but he was hell-bent on chasing something. Luckily, my other dog isn't as excitable, and she stayed by me. We went deeper into the forest looking for my dog when I heard what I thought was a wild boar. If you have never heard a boar, imagine what you assume a demon crawling out of hell sounds like, and that's pretty much it. I got nervous as I know a boar could easily gut my dog with their tusk and started yelling out for Crush to come. I could hear him barking angrily, and we made our way to where the sound were coming from. I found him looking up, barking and snarling near a large tree, and tried to pull him away. He wouldn't budge. I had to literally pick up this 80-pound dog and shuffle carry him about 100 feet away where I set him down. My other dog stayed by the tree whining, her tail in between her legs. I called for her to come to me, and she did a 180 and took off in the other direction. I looked up in the tree, but couldn't really see much, so I just chalked it up to one big-ass raccoon. It took about 2 hours, but I was finally back on my land with the dogs. I told my boyfriend about it when we got home, and he recommended not taking them out too far without leashes as to avoid this again. When I asked him what he thought it was, he agreed either a possum or raccoon, but I told him it didn't explain the boar's sound. He just said, "It's the woods, there's a lot of animals," and left it at that. A few days later, I was working from home when my dogs started going nuts. Crush started snarling and jumping up at the window. I yelled for them to stop barking, and since I had to make a call, I let the dogs out with intention to bring them back in afterwards. It took all of 10 minutes. When I opened the door, my little dog was sitting on the porch and bolted inside. Crush was gone. I stepped out and started calling for him, scanning the woods for a big furry black, but I couldn't see or hear him, so I started into the woods calling for him. I made my way to where the house is being built, and he was standing by the right-hand side of it. I called for him. He stood there frozen, ignoring me, so I walked over to him when I saw what he was staring at. It was very large and on all fours. I don't know what it was. At first, my initial thought was a manged hairless bear because of its size, but there aren't bears in that forest. I double-checked before we moved in because I was worried about the dogs getting into it with one. It also was lean, so I know it wasn't a bear as it was too thin to be one healthy enough to walk. There was fur or hair, but only on the back, and it was either dark brown or black. I couldn't see a face, but could tell it did not have an animal snout. I grabbed Crush's collar and tried to tug him towards the construction, trying not to make any sudden movements. I felt the thing watching me as I led Crush into the middle of the concrete. I didn't take my eyes off it. It was about 10 yards away when I heard the boar noise again. It was coming from it. Crush started barking and jumping toward it with me attached to him via collar. I just said jerk Crush back towards me and started running back towards the mobile home. I slammed the door, locking it behind me, and grabbed my gun. I called my boyfriend a few times before he answered and started yelling at him to come home. There is something on the property. He was home in 10 minutes and took his truck over to the construction. When he got back, he said he didn't see anything. It's been a couple weeks since then, and this past weekend, I saw it again. My boyfriend had to work late, so I was home with the dogs watching TV when my little one scratched at the door to be let out to potty. Crush followed her out, and I left them to do their business. When I opened the door, little one was shaking and couldn't get in fast enough. She hid under the dining table and refused to come out. I called out for Crush and couldn't see him as he's a black dog in the woods at night. I grabbed the flashlight and walked the perimeter of the house looking for him. I saw a big furry black, but at the back of the house where the tree line began, and called for him. He didn't move. I started towards him when I heard a bark from behind me. I felt my heart and stomach drop. I wanted to cry because I knew what I was looking at, and it wasn't my dog. He was behind me. I felt this overwhelming feeling of fear and dread and anger, and did something insane and stupid. I yelled at it and threw sticks. I told it to get away from us, get off my land, that I wanted to kill it. I seriously thought I was losing my mind because before I knew it, I was running towards it. I was about 5 feet away when that thing leapt up and into the woods. Its back legs were so long, I thought it was going to kick me. It smelled like earth and rot. I got a better look at the back of its body. It was borderline human looking, long limbs, short torso. Luckily, my moment of insanity was over and my dumb ass didn't chase it into the woods. I was mildly pleased with Misleft that I got it to run away. I started heading back towards Crush and the house when I heard the boar noises again, only they weren't just behind me, but all around the woods. I told my boyfriend. He thinks I was seeing things. I called my dad, who told me to burn sage on the property and have a shaman come and bless the land as he thinks it's a skinwalker. He's Blackfoot. I don't know what to do. I bought some cables to hook the dogs to when they go outside, so they can't go too far. I carry my gun with me anytime I have to be outside. I love this property. I love the forest and the mountains. I hate that I'm afraid anytime I walk outside. Has anyone seen something like this before? Does anyone have an idea what this is and how to keep it away from us? My boyfriend doesn't go into the woods much, so I doubt if he will ever see it. So I just sound like a crazy woo-woo lady to him. 6th story. Strange creature in the woods. I had gone down to visit my friend at his college in Virginia, U.S. We had hung out on campus until like 3 a.m. and decided to go on a walk. We walked through along a path and wound up in some woods. My friend insisted that this was a shortcut back to campus. We entered the woods and walked for about half a mile, only with our phone flashlights. Just as we crested the hill, I saw something. Originally, I thought it was a white owl sitting on a brand of a rotten tree trunk. However, as we walked closer, my curiosity turned to horror, as it was clear it was not an owl. About 20 yards from us, a white face peeked around the tree. Its face looked as it was made out of old bone, slightly yellowed and cracked. Its shape was like a mix between a human's and an elk's or horse's. Its eyes were sunken and black and looked like it had charcoal dust rubbed around them. It had no mouth, no nose. I stopped and tried to get my friend to look. That's when it peered around the stump. Its long black arm pulled it around as if to get a better look at us. Its fingers were long and thin, like spider legs. It tilted its head and wrapped its other arm around the tree. I grabbed my friend's arm and sprinted in the other direction. I have searched online for weeks looking for anything that describes the creature I saw. The only thing I can compare it to is the Wendigo. However, the Wendigo is usually found farther north. If anyone has any insight, it would much be appreciated. Shit still keeps me from wandering into the woods at night. 7th story. My weird old neighbor. This happened about 4 years ago, and I swear it's 100% true. My aunt had just moved into a new apartment in a residential complex. It was summer. I had just started high school, and I went to stay with her for a while. The apartment had 2 bedrooms. My aunt had one, and I shared the other with my older cousin, who was 9 years older than me. Since the room was small, we shared a bed. Because the electrical outlets were weirdly placed, one at the head and one at the foot, we ended up sleeping in opposite directions. She slept with her head at the top of the bed. I slept with my head at the foot. Right above her head was a large window facing another apartment building in the same complex. From where I lay, I had a perfect view straight into the apartment directly across from us. Now, my cousin always went to bed early, but I was a night owl. I usually stayed up until around 5 a.m. And that's when I noticed something weird. Every single night, without fail, at exactly 4:02 a.m., the light in that apartment would turn on. Just one light in one specific room. And at exactly 4:05 a.m., it would turn off. Never earlier, never later. 3 minutes. Every single night. At first I brushed it off, but it happened so consistently that I got curious. One night, I asked my cousin to stay up and watch it with me. Sure enough, 4:02, light turns on. 4:05 off. She was so creeped out, she told my aunt the next morning. We were all unsettled, but mostly curious. A few days later, we decided to visit the apartment and ask. A woman in her 40s opened the door. She looked kind and humble, but tired. She told us she was the daytime caregiver for the woman who lived there, an 80-something-year-old who had been completely paralyzed after a stroke. The old woman could only move her mouth and eyes. She had no husband, no children, no family. Just a small pension that barely covered this caregiver, who could only work from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. because that old lady didn't have enough money to hire her to stay overnight. Which means, from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m., the old woman was completely alone. Then the caregiver said something that made all of us go silent. The old woman had a severe eye condition. She was extremely sensitive to light and had begged the caregiver to never turn on any lights in the house, especially not at night. But we had seen that living room light turn on at 4:02 a.m. every single night. And according to the caregiver, the old woman never even left her bedroom. After that, we kind of panicked. We just thanked her and left. I still can't explain it. The precision, the timing, the fact that it stopped happening immediately after the old woman passed away. To this day, we still talk about it. None of us can make sense of it. Was it a glitch? A ghost? Something else entirely? If anyone has ever heard of anything like this, please let me know. 8th story. My dog is too smart. My brother named her Bellatrix. He's a space fan, not a Potter fan. She's a Doberman, very healthy, well taken care of. She never bit anyone, never bothered neighbors, never ran off, never refused to take her medicine. We never even had to grind up the pills and mix it into the food. She would not give us any hassle at any point. She's very protective too. I'm the youngest, just finished high school, and she seems to be extra protective of me, but she kind of takes care of everybody in the house, parents and brother. We're both adopted. Bella has been with us for 6 years now. We got her when she could barely open her eyes, and I still remember how thrilled I was. I'm not sure how to feel about that now, though. I should give some context, or this might seem completely ridiculous, and maybe it still is. Bella isn't just a good dog, she's unnaturally good. When we take her for walks, she has never needed to be leashed. We realized it when my dad had mistakenly let go of her leash at the park while talking to someone he ran into, and there were plenty of other dogs around, but Bella just sat there the whole time. When my dad was done, and this is how he described it, Bella looked up at him and used her paw to push the leash towards his foot. She then tapped the leash with her toes 3 times. What kind of dog does that? It's bizarre. I didn't believe him when he said it, but she's done similar stuff a lot over the years. Bella can nod/shake her head to convey yes/no. It's so strange. She will shake her head or nod her head when we're choosing what music to listen to on road trips. Nods come with tail wags. She likes the song. And shakes come with small boof growls and moody looks. We've come to learn that Bella loves Queen, Boney M, Janis Joplin, and Greta Van Fleet, but she doesn't like virtually anything else. We don't tell anyone about this because we know nobody would buy it, but the whole family knows. Other examples. Once I was in my room with the door closed and listening to music on headphones. Bella was napping on the bed behind me. But she came up to me, tapped me on the knee with her foot to get my attention, and then motioned with her head toward my bedroom door. I took my headphones off. My mom was knocking to tell me dinner was ready. It seems harmless, but I've never seen any other dog be so human in their mannerisms. Bella never hops around, rolls around, scrambles, plays with her toys, bounces about when strangers arrive, or any of the other things you'll see dogs doing that are normal for dog behavior. She literally never does it. She runs a lot when we take her to the park, in perfect circles along the track. She never goes on the grass and never deviates from her circuit, and she'll move around the house to check on everyone or use the toilet. She does that. We never trained her to, but otherwise she sits still, quiet, and observant, watching everyone in the house. I legit think she also watches TV and understands what's going on, like she knows that the TV, it's images on a screen and not reality. I can't explain how I feel like she knows, but I can just tell. I've legit seen her crack a doggo smile, once while we were watching The Hangover. She never barks unnecessarily, never gets hostile, always understands what we're saying, and never does anything remotely dog-like. It's freaky, but we mostly found it fascinating. Here's where it wasn't fascinating. Some red flags that none of us caught on to because we were so amazed by her. Bella never displays any of her human-like skills in front of outsiders. Whenever people come over, she always goes into her napping mode where she lies down and looks tired. So when you try to get her to do anything uncanny, she never does. Not once has she ever showed off her ability to use the toilet, turn off the lights when leaving a room. How does she understand energy bills? She can play those games that they give chimpanzees to with the little blocks and rings or whatever to test their intelligence. She can do it, but she almost seems bored by them. I swear to God, I saw her eyeing the chess set on my upper shelf in my room a few times. I refuse to believe she can play chess, and I refuse to find out. So she never shows off in front of others, and she never shows off in front of camera. This is extra freaky. Whenever I pull out my phone to record her, she becomes stiff like she's caught off guard, and then she just does generic dog stuff like tongue out, barking, tail wagging, scratching, sniffing, rolling around, groaning, etc. When the camera is off her, she's back to normal, her version of normal, but completely abnormal for dogs. I don't know how she knows what a camera is, phone or handheld camcorder, but she knows. We never gave her any training. Right now, as I type this, she's outside my bedroom door. I've locked it from the inside, but I can see her shadow from the crack under the door. She's just standing there. I know why. I can't come out. I can't even call the police because I adore her and I don't want to get her in trouble or euthanized, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I've been trying to calm down for almost an hour before I even started typing this. I was seeing this guy from school for a few weeks. We weren't official, just testing the waters. Guess I'm a bad judge of character because it turns out every time we've hooked up at his house, he recorded it. He had a discreet camera in his bedroom, and he had 4 or 5 videos, basically every time we did it so far. My parents are gone for the weekend, and my brother is out just for tonight for a work thing. He figured I'd be safe on my own since Bella was there. I decided to invite my ex-buddy over since he's always hosting me, so I should do it for once. He comes over, and we're talking in the kitchen about random stuff, right? And Bella, she's right there, literally right across the floor from us, sitting, not looking directly at us, but also not doing anything else. The guy, I'll call him Jeff, even commented a few times on how freakishly well behaved my dog is. And I was kind of freaked out too because she never displays her uncanny valley bullshit when other people are around. But she was doing it when he came over. And while we're talking, he decides to show me that he's been secretly recording me having sex with him. He has videos on his phone. He thought it was so cool, and I'd be flattered. What? I told him to delete those immediately and get out of my house. But he's outright refusing to delete them. He tells me it's his property, and he can do what he wants with it. And he started threatening me. He said if I broke up with him, we weren't even officially together, he would blur out his own face and post the videos on porn sites. To be honest, I don't think he would have actually done it, but the threat alone is disgusting enough. I didn't even have a chance to respond, though. Bella ripped off his fingers. She jumped across the room, no growling, no barking, totally unprovoked, and bit down on the hand he was holding his phone with, and ripped 2 of his fingers clean off. I screamed, and he was losing it too. Blood everywhere. Still I haven't been able to go out and clean up. He starts to run for the door screaming that he's going to call the cops over my dog and have her put down. I have no idea how to react. I'm looking at Bella, who seems so completely calm and collected. Jeff's phone is on the floor, covered in blood. And this dog, Bella, she uses her paw to push the phone towards me. She looks at me and nods. And then she runs after Jeff out the door. I try to call her back, but I couldn't even speak at that moment. She ran out, ran after him, and I heard some scuffles, him yelling some more, and then his voice sort of choked like he was choking. He stopped yelling. I could only hear the choking because it was such a quiet night. We live in the suburbs, and not much goes down here. I managed to pick up the phone and walk over to the open door of the house and peek out. It's pretty dark out, around 10 p.m. I can see Bella standing in the middle of the road. I can see Jeff. He's curled up on the road. He's not moving. And there's a pool of blood around him getting bigger and bigger, rolling off the street and toward the drain. I saw this and almost passed out. I was terrified. And then Bella, standing perfectly still, turns her head and looks right at me. I lost it. I sprinted to my room and shut the door. Locked it. I didn't shut the main door, so Bella ran back inside. But I heard her close the main door. I heard the lock turn too. And now she's standing right outside my bedroom. My brother is coming home tomorrow afternoon, and my parents are coming the day after. There's blood all over my kitchen, and Jeff is dead on the street outside. Bella's knocking on my door with her paw. I can hear her toenails. Literal 3 knocks with intervals, just like how a human knocks. She's doing the low boof growl too, getting louder every time. She wants me to come out and clean up the mess so I don't get in trouble. But I have Jeff's phone. I deleted his videos, but his location is on. They're going to know he was here. What has this dog done? How do I get out of this? Edit. I went out and cleaned up the blood in the kitchen. Bella had already pulled out all the sanitation stuff we had from the bathroom sink cupboard while I was having a meltdown in my room. She probably would have done it herself, but she physically can't use a mop? I don't see what else could have stopped her. My beloved dog and best friend just committed murder, and I'm covering it up. Not how I wanted my home alone night to go. I tossed Jeff's phone in my front yard and wiped all my prints off it. When the police ask me why it's there, I'll just say, I don't know. I'm not going to walk out to his corpse and plant the phone on him now because the neighbors would see me. I just hope they didn't see her. I'm going to pretend I had no idea that there's a man dead on the street in front of my house. Let someone else call the cops. I tried to hug Bella, but she wouldn't let me. She kept ushering me to finish the cleanup. I also saw her smearing some of Jeff's blood with her paw and then looking at it. At her paw. I'll need to wash that off before she walks all over the house with it. It's happening again. I'm shaking again. Can't feel my fingers. My ankle hurts so much. Need to log this while I still can. I'm in my bedroom. It's late. It's 2:34 a.m. The whole house is lit. I went around turning every single light on because I'm terrified. Last time when I wrote about Bella, I had my bedroom door locked. She was waiting for me outside, knocking. This time I didn't bother. The door is cracked open and there's nobody there. Bella's gone. I can hear my family in the living room talking in low whispers with the police. They questioned me enough already. I needed some alone time to write this down. If you've read part 1, it's been 2 months since my dog Bella killed this guy I was hooking up with for recording us in bed without my permission and threatening to post it online. Never thought I'd be typing something like that. Never thought I'd make it 2 months since then. So, Bella had brought out the cleaning supplies, and she even brought me a mop in motion with her paw for me to clean up the blood on the kitchen floor. Jeff's body was outside on the road, and I couldn't hear any yelling, so nobody had seen him yet. It was a miracle. Dark, empty suburbs, yeah, but even a car should have come by at this point. I was mopping frantically. Bella saw me going at it and left. She went to my room. I didn't know for what, but later I found out she'd gone to grab Jeff's phone, which I'd carelessly left lying around in my bedroom trying to delete the videos, and she brought it to me, tapping on it with her paw, tapping on the bottle of Lysol. I got the message. Wipe your prints. When I did, she took it with her mouth back outside the house to Jeff's body, and she planted it on his corpse. Tucked it into his hoodie pocket and everything. I can't believe this dog. I can't. Even knowing everything I know about her. Knowing how smart she's always been. This was something else. But I cleaned up. I cleaned up well. My family came home after Jeff's body was found right outside our house. The cops tracked his movement through his phone and found that he was in the area when he died, but GPS isn't so sensitive that it could show him literally inside my house before his death. Clearly, since I told them about our relationship, they questioned me. A lot. What was he doing outside your house? When did you last speak? Why are there bite marks on his throat? What did your dog do to Jeff? Everyone vouched for Bella when that question eventually came around. She'd never hurt a fly. She had never even barked at anyone without good reason her whole life, let alone bite. And me, I saw what she'd done to Jeff. Tore his finger off, ripped his throat apart, left him to die, choking on his own blood. I didn't know I could lie to police so easily, but I did. Bella was with me inside the whole night. We watched Ant-Man and the Wasp together. I had no idea Jeff was even outside my house until the neighbors caused a commotion. Bella was sleeping on my lap. She was innocent. I hate myself now for lying then. I shouldn't have. I should have been braver. It's been a rough 2 months. Jeff's parents corner me in a grocery store and call me a whore who took away their only child. My own parents are distant because their little girl has an active sex life, and that's apparently too heretical for a 19-year-old. Yeah, focus on that, and not the fact that someone I know died and it might be affecting me. I'd never tell them Bella did it, but it would be nice to have a consoling hand. My brother was the only one who cared. I'll call him Red, his favorite color. He's the one who named Bella, and they both always had an understanding of some kind. He was the same with me too. For a good few weeks, the three of us seemed like the only real family. But even Red didn't know what really happened with Jeff. His final decisions aside, he was a fun guy, and at least I thought, a good friend. I miss whoever that was he was pretending to be. Bella understood that too. She kept her distance from me, as though she knew I was uncomfortable around her. But wouldn't be. I still fed her, filled her water bowl, made sure she got what she needed, but something was off now. How could a dog do something like this? I should have told the police the truth. Should have told them to put Bella down. No, what am I thinking? Never. Never. Yesterday, I got a call from a detective handling Jeff's case. Susan. We'll go with Susan. She said she wanted me to come down to the station to discuss something urgent. I told her I can't because I broke my ankle last week trying to play soccer, which is true, and nobody was home to drive me down there, except Bella. Maybe she can drive too. I wouldn't put it past her. Susan said it's fine. She could come to our house to speak if I was cool with it. I said yes. I shouldn't have said yes. Why is this happening? Why couldn't Bella just be a normal dog? I don't need a genius dog. I don't need a super intelligent animal. I would have been happy with a normal, happy dog that barks and snarls and poops and pees and chews furniture and swallows stuff and wags her tail when she's happy. But Bella's none of that. Susan came over at around 6 p.m. I was thinking of checking my university application status when she knocked. She sat down. We exchanged basic small talk. How have you been? How's your leg? Blah, blah, blah. Bella was in the room, sitting right over on the kitchen floor, across the couch where Susan sat, facing her, sitting perfectly still and watching. I was sitting across from Susan with Bella in my peripheral to the right. I felt nervous, even though Bella had never done anything to hurt me. Quite the opposite. I was still nervous. Susan said she'll get to her point. There was something about my brother, Red, she wanted to ask me about. She came across this while looking into me because of my connection with Jeff. And not just Red, this was about Bella too. I was so confused. What did my brother have to do with Jeff's death? And they had no proof on Bella just because of the bite marks. I vouched for her. My whole family did. What Susan said next I still can't quite wrap my head around. Bella wasn't adopted from shelter like I was told. Red bought her from someone who's apparently been on the radar of the local police. I didn't believe it. What kind of bullshit was that? Why lie about it if she was purchased? Why tell me Bella was from shelter? And how is this even true? I didn't notice it then, but Bella had gotten to all fours. She wasn't sitting anymore. I don't think Susan noticed either. We were talking. I was very upset, confused. Bella's change in movement was so silent. Couldn't even hear her nails tap the linoleum floor of the kitchen when she moved. Susan said Bella was purchased by Red years ago when she was tiny. I don't know how they found this out or how they were legally investigating my brother at all, who wasn't even home when Jeff died. I had too many questions, but Susan didn't answer any of them. Said it's above her station and something about higher-ups getting involved. I was so confused. I still am. I have no answers. But Susan began to say how Bella isn't a regular dog. She brought it up casually, but she was eyeing Bella, who was staring right back. Susan had noticed over the course of 2 months, and she said it outright. Bella isn't normal. She's not natural. And I remember clearly Susan saying with something odd in her voice, "There's a reason for that. I never got to find out." We both heard it at once. Bella was growling, a vicious snarl, white fangs bared, face scrunched up with malice, head low and back hunched, saliva dripping from her open scowl. Bella, the quietest, most well-behaved dog I'd ever known, was growling at Susan, fully intent on pouncing. I remember trying to calm Bella down, but my broken ankle. I was sitting, my crutches were beside the couch. I couldn't just run over to her. Susan had gotten her feet too. I didn't see at the time, but she was probably already reaching for her gun. It all happened so fast. The lights died in a flash. Not just ours, every house in the neighborhood. Plunged into pure darkness. A power outage. Bella's growls grew louder and louder, and when the black shadows cut off my vision, and I could see nothing at all, and the lights in the kitchen and the living room inexplicably vanished, I heard her growling stop, and I heard her feet pounce across the floor. I screamed. Susan screamed. I screamed Bella's name, struggling to get to my goddamn feet. I heard barking, vicious barking, snarling, and screaming, and choking, and I fell back down, covering my ears when I heard the gunshot. Loudest thing I've ever heard in my life. The muzzle flash against the sudden darkness blinded me again. I couldn't hear or see anything for a while. I just remember saying Bella over and over, instinctively. Not sure why. Might have been a fear response. She was always my protector, always by my side, never let anyone hurt me. But I never wanted her to hurt others either. The power came back almost immediately. I saw the reddish haze of the ceiling lamp come back on through my eyelids. I opened my eyes, and I still can't really understand how this is happening to me. Susan's body was on the couch, her throat ripped open, her eyes open and glassy. There's so much blood. I threw up when I saw her. Not because it's gross, because I'm so terrified. Her uniform, her hair, blood on everything. Everything. The coffee table, the couch across her, my ankle cast that my friends all signed and drew dicks on. Blood everywhere. A gun in Susan's hand. And no sign of Bella. She ran. The front door was open. She ran away. She's gone. I couldn't do anything. I was frozen. I was crying. The neighbors heard the gunshot and called 911. Police showed up and saw Susan. And it all snowballed from there. Jeff's case got reopened. Bella got blamed for it, and I got blamed for hiding it. Red got home soon after the cops arrived, and he got taken in for questioning. Some people wearing black came and took him away. They weren't the police, but the police didn't stop them. Red didn't look at me before he left. I still need to know what Susan was trying to tell me. What was apparently worth her life to keep a secret? My parents turned on me when they came home a couple of hours later. How could I have lied to protect Bella? I couldn't believe them. How could I not lie to protect Bella? She's family too. She's my best friend, my protector, and I'm hers. She's made a mistake. She killed Susan even though Susan was no threat to me. She made a terrible mistake, but she's still family. I'm sure she had reasons. I'm going to get dragged into Jeff's murder hard. I should. I clean up the crime scene. But there's no cleaning this up. Bella knew that. Maybe that's why she left. There was no way to brush this under the rug. But I don't understand why she did it. I don't know what to do now. Bella's missing. She's out there somewhere. Bella, I know you'll never hear this, but I don't care where you came from or what you are. I still love you. Whatever you do, don't come home. They'll kill you. Ninth story. My dog spoke to me. I need to figure out how to protect him. I was drunk the first time I heard it. At least, that's what I told myself. It was just past midnight, and I was slouched on my couch, TV murmuring some late-night infomercial. Baxter, my golden retriever, lay curled up beside me, his tail thumping lazily against the cushions. Good boy, I muttered, scratching behind his ears. Good boy, a voice whispered back. I sat up, so fast my head spun. The house was quiet. The TV host droned on about non-stick pans. Baxter stretched, yawned, and settled back down. I stared at him. Did you just? My voice trailed off. He didn't react. I rubbed my face, loud a nervous laugh. Too much whiskey. Too little sleep. That had to be it. But then it happened again. And again. At first, it was simple, almost sweet. Good boy. Love you. Sleep tight. A whispery echo of things I'd said to him before. Like a parrot. Then it got weird. I'll watch you sleep. I try to laugh it off. Maybe I'd said that to him once as a joke, drunk or delirious. Maybe he was just repeating it back. Then one night, as I was locking up, he whispered, "You should lock the door." The hairs on my arms stood up. My hand froze over the deadbolt. The door was already locked. I turned to look at him. Baxter was lying by the stairs, staring at me. Mouth closed, but I swear I still heard it, faint as a breath against my ear. You should lock the door. I didn't sleep that night. I started testing it. Baxter, what's 2 plus 2? I asked one morning, voice light, joking. He just wagged his tail. I chuckled. All right, buddy. Say Baxter is the best dog. Nothing. Maybe I was losing it. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt him jump up, circle once, then settle at my feet. His warm breath puffed against my toes. I was drifting off when the whisper came again. Don't turn around. A cold rush of adrenaline flooded my veins. My body stiffened. He was at my feet. His mouth wasn't near my ear. I swallowed hard. Why? I whispered. Silence. Slowly, I turned my head. Baxter was staring past me, eyes locked on something over my shoulder. Unblinking. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The whisper came again, softer than ever, but clearer than before. Because it doesn't like to be seen. I shot up, flicked on the bedside lamp, heart hammering. Nothing was there. Just my empty room. Just my dog, staring. But this time his tail wasn't wagging. I didn't sleep. I left the lamp on, the TV humming in the background, anything to keep the silence from creeping in. Baxter stayed at the foot of my bed, curled up but rigid, ears twitching at sounds I couldn't hear. I kept telling myself I was imagining things, that he wasn't really whispering, that none of this was real. But then, around 3 a.m., he growled. Not the playful, throaty grumble he made when I scratched his belly. This was low, deep, a sound that didn't belong in his throat. And he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the closet. A chill crawled up my spine. Baxter, I whispered. What is it? His growl deepened, lips pulling back over his teeth. His body trembled, but he didn't move. The closet door was open. Just a crack. I was sure, so sure, that I had closed it. The whisper came again, but this time it wasn't soft. It was wet, sticking to the inside of my skull like breath against glass. It knows you're awake. Something shifted behind the door. A rustle, the scrape of fabric against wood. You should have locked the door. Baxter launched himself off the bed, snarling, charging the closet with more rage than I had ever seen in him. The door slammed open, and for one heart-stopping second I saw, no, I felt it, a shape, a wrongness, something not meant to be seen. Baxter yelped, then whimpered, then went silent. The air in the room pressed against me, thick and heavy, a presence curling around my lungs. My legs wouldn't move, wouldn't run, wouldn't. The closet door creaked shut. Click. And just like that, it was over. Baxter lay motionless on the floor, his body limp, breath coming in shallow, rapid pants. I scrambled to him, hands shaking as I ran them over his fur. Baxter, buddy, are you okay? What the hell was that? He didn't look at me, didn't react, didn't whisper. He was fine, physically at least. And by the morning, he was up and moving again. It's been weeks since then. Baxter still eats, still wags his tail, still follows me from room to room. But he's not the same. He won't go near the closet, won't even look at it. And at night, when he curls up at my feet, I swear I can feel him trembling, like he's listening to something I can't hear. I don't know what was in my closet. I don't know how he started talking to me. But I know he was doing it to keep me safe, and I know that if something ever comes out of the closet again, I'll do what I can to protect him. 10th story. The hot dog man. I was sitting next to a man, waiting for a train. He was eating a hot dog. He gave off a contented vibe, like an animal that had just caught its prey and was savoring its victory. I mean, he was even eating super loudly. It definitely added to that. He was slurping the hot dog up, but it seemed to last forever, an infinite hot dog, even though it was tiny. So disgusting. I looked over at him discreetly, in disgust, and subtly scrunched up my face in case he saw me and realized how gross he was eating. I looked at the hot dog, white bread and red-brown meat, with the bread sprayed over the meat and the sausage completely obliterated at the end. He lifted the hot dog up to his mouth, making a horrible smacking sound as his lips parted and chomped down while exhaling. I looked away in disgust, contemplated just leaving. My legs had tensed up several times since he had sat down with his gross hot dog, ready to jump up and leave, but my mind kept saying he'd finish the hot dog soon, and you'll be able to relax soon. How was it that the hot dog seemed so endless? He's been eating for 10 minutes already. Maybe he wasn't. I was just exaggerating. I so wanted to leave, but the effort. The train station was deserted. Why did he have to sit next to me? And he know why I left? I couldn't just hide. It was a straight flat station. To stand in the staircase would be weird. And what if he decided to stand up too and saw me hiding out in the staircase like an idiot? I looked at him again from the corner of my eye. A balding man, his leftover hair sticking straight up. A bloated face content with a sliver of a smug smile, greasy lips with food coating their corners, but a smug smile that seriously made me want to punch his face. You know how it is when people smile that way. It's not possible to be totally calm with no hint of violence. I clenched my teeth so hard that I unclenched them immediately for fear of breaking them, and snapped my head away. He was chewing with his mouth open, and the train wasn't coming. My mind was buzzing. I saw red, slammed my feet onto the ground as I stood up rapidly, and then shrunk back. That was too much anger. I could only imagine the man looking up at me with shock in his eyes and fear. I bowed my head a bit, mouthed sorry without turning to look at him, and left immediately, walking a bit further away from him. But that would be too obvious. I walked up to the end of the platform and peeked into the tunnel, as if looking for the train. I looked back at the man as I turned around to sit down on another bench. He had turned into some fat, slimy monster. His business suit had all but melted into his body, the pattern etched into the gross, discolored, gray, tan, soggy skin. If I had grabbed him, I'm sure I would have been able to rip off a bunch of his skin away without resistance. He was just as gross as his hot dog. I was fixated on that until he lifted that hot dog again to take a bite, slime dripping down onto his body that resembled sludge. I stared, mesmerized, but not feeling anything, maybe a bit of curiosity, up at his face, the shape of a turd. His teeth were glimmering, longer and much more than normal, and shining like precious gems out of the sludge. It was almost art. The complete opposition between the vomit-inducing pile of sag and bloated skin was it even skin and a shining, sparkling diamond straight out of a dentistry ad. I mean, you can make a good ad. The ad doesn't matter what you look like if you have good teeth. Part of me wanted to touch them. They were truly beautiful. I'm not a dentist. They were so beautiful I could have ignored the mess of his body. But I didn't, because he took another bite of his hot dog, and I snapped back my view to the train tracks, and the spell broke. There was no way this was real. I mean, I must have imagined it. And besides, if he was a monster, then wouldn't he try to eat me? I tried to make myself scared, but I couldn't. I mean, I think I would know if he was dangerous, right? My ego would tell me. It was like he was just an animal near me, a squirrel or something. I mean, he didn't even acknowledge me. Didn't even glance at me, didn't care about my presence. I ventured another glance. His eyes were tiny black pinpricks, but I could just see the happiness in them. His never-ending hot dog. How is that possible? He has definitely been eating for 30 minutes. Where's the train? The tunnel was empty. That didn't make sense. I checked my watch. The seconds were ticking in reverse. I counted 27 seconds until the minute hand jumped forward. Not backwards. This was so weird. It's not even that my watch is showing time going backwards. It's just going crazy. The sludge pile had left. A chill swept down my entire body. This is a bit like a horror movie. The thing disappears and then reappears behind you and kills you. I pressed myself against the wall as I reminded myself of that. But then, what if he came from inside the wall? I looked back and decided I'd stay at the wall. The train wasn't coming, and dread was filling every artery and vein in my body. And the train was coming. I heard its rumble from the tunnels. I didn't feel relief yet, not until I got onto that train. And everyone looked normal, just like the usual train. There was slime, and that sickening color dripping down from the seats where he had been. But no slimy footprints to show where he could have went. Maybe he did go into the wall, after all. And then I saw him again. Just appeared like that, this time back to his businessman form. With another hot dog. Went to his slimy seat and started scrubbing with the hot dog soaking in the slime rapidly. And just as the train was leaving the station, I caught a glimpse of him shoving the hot dog up his mouth. The soggy, dripping gray hot dog. I almost threw up, but I'm glad to say I didn't. I must have gone crazy because none of the commuters seemed disturbed at all. Anyways, I got back home without another incident and slept well, dreaming of hot dogs. But the good ones, not soggy, never-ending ones. Thanks a lot for watching this video till the end. Drop your suggestions in the comment section. Welcome, brave souls, to the chilling depths of horror in detail. Today, we're going to share Dogman encounter horror stories. First story. I work at Animal Control and want to tell a wacky story. Hey all. Well, this is my first time actually submitting something on No Sleep. I'm an avid reader on the site, and all the other stories have inspired me to tell y'all about something that I encountered recently. I know for a fact that people here enjoy weird up stories, and I do too. If not, we wouldn't be here right now. Anyways, let me tell you a little about myself and what I do. I'll admit, before posting this story, I was a bit hesitant to say my real name, but then I said it. About 1 billion other people have the same name. Not like anyone's going to recognize me. My name's Anthony, but most of my friends and relatives call me Tony. I guess y'all can call me that, too. I'm in my mid-30s, living in a small town in the U.S., but I'm not going to specify where. For 8 years, I've been working at animal control in my area. I've had to handle thieving raccoons, bats hiding in attics, street dogs foaming at the mouth, among other things. But even though I've seen a lot of shit, I have never seen anything similar to what I saw on my latest call last week. Normally, I'm only called in for emergencies, so I've had to wake up at ungodly hours many times before. Sometimes I work normal shifts as well, but I seem to be more efficient when handling an emergency. I recall that it was Friday when a dispatcher rang me up. It was about 5 in the morning, which wasn't too bad compared to other times I've been called. She gave me a brief explanation of what the situation was. A woman had called to report an animal that broke into her house. Apparently, it was too dark for her to see the animal, but she described it as quite large and possibly rabid. It had gotten into a scuffle with her dog, and she was too afraid to stop them because she didn't know how dangerous the other animal was. So I jotted down her address on a piece of paper, got dressed, and prepared some gear I'd need. The drive was relatively short, now that her house was only 15 minutes away from mine. The lights inside the quaint little house were on, and I could hear voices inside. Not 1 minute upon knocking, the door swung open, revealing a short woman in a robe. She seemed to be younger than me, innocent somehow, but maybe it was just the fear in her wide eyes. A young boy clung to her leg, peering up at me silently. "Oh, thank goodness you're here," she breathed, clearly relieved. She let me step inside, quickly closing the door behind us, as if afraid something might try to come in. That thing is still in our yard. It took Roscoe with him, but I can't hear his yipping anymore. She guided me to the kitchen as she talked nonstop, probably out of nervousness. Glass was spilled across the tile floor, forcing her and her son to stay back. The door to the backyard had a pretty big hole, with jagged teeth of glass menacingly pointing in all directions. The hole was about 27 inches in diameter, so this had to be something the size of a Great Dane. I could hear faint growling and other strange noises coming from outside, but her porch lights were off, and the light spilling out from the kitchen wasn't enough for me to really see anything. I prepared a catch pole, a bite stick, and loaded a gun with some tranquilizing darts, mentally preparing myself for whatever I was about to encounter. It was probably just a rabid dog or, worst case scenario, a damn mountain lion. "So you said your dog tried to fight it?" I asked, glancing over my shoulder. I was surprisingly calm, perhaps because sleep hadn't completely worn off. Yes, he was barking furiously once it broke in. All the commotion woke Scotty and I up, but when I came downstairs, I only saw Roscoe dashing outside after the thing. She explains, absently petting her son's head. They had the same wild reddish hair. They've been out there ever since, but his barking ceased not too long ago. I probably have to clean that mess, too. What kind of dog is he? Like, how small compared to the other animal? He's a Scottish Terrier, very gentle and certainly friendly with other dogs. I had never seen him act like this, honestly. But now seeing the size of that darn hole. Oh, poor thing, he's so small. He couldn't possibly stand a chance against something like that. She sighed, jutting her chin at the messed-up door. I nodded once, gripping the doorknob. Cautiously, I opened the door, slowly stepping outside. The growling continued, and I squinted, trying to get my eyes to adjust enough for me to see where it was. Suddenly, I saw its silhouette. And let me tell you, that was big. As big as an abnormally large Great Dane. Something wasn't right. It seemed to have its head bent down, devouring what I guessed was Roscoe. Swallowing hard, I began to step forward, searching for the porch steps. The animal didn't seem to notice me, which I was thankful for. Seeing it out here, eating some poor dog, really made me uneasy. A faint metallic smell lingered in the air, mixed with another unpleasant smell that I couldn't quite put my finger on. As my eyes adjusted some more, I could see its vertebrae jutting out its back, as well as the inky black hair standing on edge. A sudden sound stopped me in my tracks. It was that weird, exaggerated humming sound someone made when someone was fake vomiting. But then that turned to gagging. Unnaturally human-sounding gags. And the gagging turned into straight-up hacking. It kept coughing repeatedly, its back arching and body jerking almost violently. I caught a glimpse of its mouth, and my eyes widened in shock. It was open wide, way too wide, as if its lower jaw was broken and hanging limply. I watched as it regurgitated something back onto the grass. Bones, small ones. A very foul smell reached me, and now it was me who gagged. After covering my mouth and nose with my sleeve, I reached a hand back, suddenly remembering the flashlight I had tucked in my back pocket. With trembling hands, I managed to switch it on, training it directly on the creature. I suppressed a scream at the sight. It wasn't pretty, and it certainly wasn't a dog or a mountain lion. I had no clue what this thing was. It lacked eyes, though it still moved its head in my direction as if it was looking at me. It had no ears or nose either, just an enormous mouth. Its limbs looked broken, bent at odd, almost impossible angles. Its hair was kind of sparse and seemingly rough, like a black pig's hair. Underneath, I could see sickening grayish-yellow skin. Its mouth was still open, showing rows and rows of rotten teeth that, for some odd reason, seemed to vary from animal to human teeth. It growled at me, the sound deep and rumbling. In a brief moment of adrenaline and probably sheer stupidity, I swung one end of the catchpole at its neck. Surprisingly, I caught it, but not for long. It thrashed violently, screeching like a pig being slaughtered. Gritting my teeth, I tried to pull it, but it was clearly stronger than me. The pole slipped from my grasp, and the horrible creature lunged at me. Searing pain went up my arm as it scratched me, but I hit it with a biting pole. The thing let out one last piercing cry as it ran away. I tried shooting it with a tranquilizer, but failed due to the angle I lay in. The woman called out from inside, asking if I was okay. I didn't have an answer for her. I had called up a buddy who I knew would be awake at that time and told him to come to this woman's house. He came in roughly half an hour, where I had time to ponder on a lie to tell the woman. She kept asking me what had happened, what had killed her dog. When he arrived, we stepped aside and I told him what happened. He didn't really believe me at first, but one look at my arm and he paled. The thing got me good. After getting patched up, I proceeded to tell the woman that the animal was a mountain lion. That explained the size of the hole and the mauling of her dog. She seemed to believe me. To this day, I had told no one other than my buddy about this creature. In my 8 damn years, I had never seen such monstrosity. I still can't really believe it myself. It feels like it was a nightmare. But the healing scratch on my arm told me it was very real. I've been very wary ever since that one night, being extremely careful in every place I'm sent to. But luckily, I haven't seen that creature ever since. I have heard of several dog disappearances in my neighborhood lately, though. I can't help but connect the dots. It has to be that thing. But even if it is, I don't want to find out. Second story. My neighbor got a dog. I don't think it's actually a dog. My neighbor Jack adopted a border collie 2 weeks ago. At least that's what I thought. Now I'm not so sure. I first saw Toto out on a walk. He was sniffing some of the flowers growing next to the sidewalk as Jack waited, scrolling through his cell phone. Wow, you got a dog. I called out, waving. I certainly did. His name's Toto, Border Collie mix. Toto stopped sniffing the flowers and glanced up at me. I'd encountered many dogs on this street, and they ran the whole gamut of dog greetings, from curious sniffs to protective growling to jumping up and licking my face. None of them just stared at me like Toto did. Wow, he's beautiful, and so big for a collie mix. I began to crouch down. Can I pet him? Oh, actually, he's a little shy, Jack said. Having a little trouble adapting, you know, but I'm sure he'll warm up in a few days. He tugged gently on the leash. Come on, Toto. I watched as they walked away from me. The next time I saw Toto, I was dropping something off for Jack. He'd lent me his drill for a home improvement project, and I'd never returned it. But when I rang the doorbell, I didn't hear the usual barking I did with other dog owners. Instead, just the pat, pat, pat of feet against wood. And then Toto's face was in the glass inset of the door, staring out at me. Not barking or growling or pawing at the door. Just staring. Before I could think anything of it, Jack's footsteps sounded through the hall, and the door swung open. Hey, Amir. Just wanted to give you this back. Oh, thanks. Hey, why don't you come in? I'm just about to pull some cookies out of the oven. Jack was an avid baker, and I couldn't say no to his cookies. I stepped inside and followed the warm cinnamon smell to the kitchen. Toto followed behind me, but I could tell something was off. I don't have a dog, but I have a lot of friends with dogs. And we can always tell the dog is coming our way when we hear that mistakable clicking sound of its nails against the floor. It was instinctual at this point. Hear that sound and scarf down the last bit of steak, or put the chocolate out of reach, or get ready to get licked on the face. This dog didn't make that sound. No clicking of nails against the wooden floor. Just sort of a dull thump, thump, thump with each step. I glanced back at Toto, and I realized his movements were a little odd too. His steps were a little jerky, a little stiff, a little clumsy for a dog of his build. He wasn't limping or anything, just overall, the movements didn't look quite right. Hope you like snickerdoodles, Jack said, pulling the tray out of the oven. Wow, they look amazing. My Nana's recipe, he said proudly. Ate these every day after school. Fond memories. I picked up a cookie and took a bite. But I had an audience. Toto was staring at me. Well, that wasn't weird. Dogs love to stare at people's food. I was just about to ask Jack if these cookies were safe for dogs, but his phone went off. Oh, sorry, man. Gotta take this, he muttered as he disappeared down the hall and into the office. I sat down at the kitchen table. Toto didn't move, just stared at me from across the kitchen. Weirdly, he wasn't licking his lips or anything as he stared hungrily at the cookie in my hand. You're a weird dog, but I like you, I said. The dog continued to stare. I'm sorry I can't give you any cookie. I don't know if they're safe. More staring. You're gonna like it here. It's a good neighborhood. He canted his head, and as he did, I realized there was something off. Something about the way the light bounced off his fur. It was a little too shiny, a little too perfectly groomed for a rough and tumble collie dog. I squinted at him, studying him, and then I heard something. A quiet, rushing sound, like a whisper. And I guess I must have been imagining it, but it almost sounded like, God, it almost sounded like someone whispering. Help me. I stared at the dog. Sorry about that, Jack said, wandering back in. I just had to take that. It was a new client, and we're trying to keep him. How do you like the cookies? They were amazing, I said, standing up. But I've got to go. Mandy and the girls will be back from softball any time now, and I'm supposed to have dinner ready. Oh, dinner duty, huh? He motioned at the snickerdoodles. Take some back with you. Say you made them from scratch. Mandy knows I can't bake like that. But thanks. I stepped out the front door, waving back at Jack and Toto. Jack waved, grinning. The dog just stared at me, as usual. But this time his black, glassy eyes sent chills down my spine. I swear, there's something messed up about that dog. The girls were asleep, and Mandy and I were enjoying some much-needed quality time. We sat on the couch with a bottle of wine, an episode of The Office in the background as we talked about our days. Mandy was surprisingly interested in the story. "So you've never heard him bark?" "No." "And he walks weird and just stares at you?" "Yup." She shook her head, laughing. "That does sound really weird. Even weirder than Aunt Polly's dog. Remember her? Is it the one that makes the weird screeching sound?" "Yeah." We laughed about it, hung out some more, and then eventually went to sleep. But even an hour after Mandy had fallen asleep, around midnight, I was lying wide awake, thinking about that dog. And then I decided to do something really stupid. I probably never would have done it if I hadn't drunk 3 glasses of wine. But with liquid courage, I crept downstairs and slipped out of the house. The lights were still on in Jack's house. When I got there, I ducked behind his hydrangea and peered into the window. Golden light spilled into the living room from the kitchen. Jack was sitting on the couch, looking at his laptop. Toto was lying on the floor, his black eyes glittering in the low light. Surprisingly, he didn't seem to detect my presence at all. After several minutes, Jack shut the laptop and disappeared down the hallway. Toto watched him, but didn't follow. I was about to go back home, and then I saw it. Toto stood up, and then, using the couch to balance himself, he stood up again. He was standing on 2 legs. I watched with wide eyes as he walked into the kitchen, stood in front of the refrigerator, and then a small opening appeared, smack dab in the middle of Toto's chest. A human hand came out. It grasped the refrigerator door, pulled it open, greedily grabbed some food off the shelf. Then the dog sat back down on the floor, cross-legged, and the hand, holding a leftover sandwich, disappeared into the hole. I stared through the window, my heart pounding in my chest. It's a costume. There's a person in there. I hightailed out of there, wrapped myself in blankets, and lay next to my wife, wide awake, thoughts rolling through my head. I didn't expect to fall asleep, but I must have, because the next thing I knew, a loud noise woke me from a deep sleep. Knocking. Someone was knocking on my front door. Bleary-eyed, I hobbled down the stairs. I looked through the peephole and saw Jack, standing on my front porch, looking incredibly angry. I don't know what he wants, but I think he knows that I know, that for some reason, he's keeping what appears to be a full-grown man in his house, wearing a dog costume and pretending to be a dog. Because when I went over there that night, still tipsy from the wine, I totally forgot he has security cameras. Third story. My father has the curse of the Dogman. There was a running joke in my family for many years. It was always the ladies who said it, never the men, as if the guys were in on some secret the women didn't know about. "There goes the werewolf," my mother and aunts would say as Grandpa was going out the door, hat in hand. "He always disappears on full moons and never comes back until the morning." As children, we would laugh along with them, not understanding the true reasons for his leaving. The years went on, and my grandfather, who I call my Opa, kept disappearing on full moons until he was no longer able to walk. Soon after that, he was admitted to the hospital and came down with a bad infection, passing away a short while later from a myriad of complications. Strangely, after his death, my dad took up the tradition of disappearing during full moons. He never did it before Opa passed away, but suddenly he started exhibiting the exact same behavior. "I'm heading out," he would say to my mother, putting on his coat and leaving the house right before sunset. "I'll see you in the morning." Again, "You really are turning into your father," my mom would call after him as he hurried down the porch steps, sometimes jogging or running as if late for an appointment. She didn't realize how right she was. Asterisk. Eventually, I moved away and went to college, found a girlfriend and got engaged, married, and bought a house. If you want to sum up my entire life in one sentence, I guess that about does it. Except something happened recently, derailing that one-sentence description of my existence and turning it into a rambling run-on with no end in sight. My father called and told me he needed to talk to me about something. He said it was important and couldn't wait. I needed to come over right away. "What is it?" I asked once we were finally alone in his basement man cave. He poured 2 glasses of scotch halfway to the brim, then added a bit more for good measure. He handed me one of the glasses, and I took it, eyeing him suspiciously. "I don't drink," I reminded him. "Trust me, you'll want that." He sat down on a leather chair across from me, the fire roaring beside him. I took a tentative sip and winced at the burn, smacking my lips to try and appreciate the taste, then set the glass down on the table beside me. "I've been trying to keep this from you for as long as possible. I have to tell you something important about your Opa. Opa's been dead for years." I smiled nervously. "You're not losing your memory, are you, Dad?" "My memory is fine. Just listen, okay? Your Opa had a secret, and now it's my secret, and I have to pass it on to you. It's important, okay? Just trust me." "All right," I said nervously, and took another sip of the drink. The burn wasn't as bad this time, and was more like a warmth that coated my throat and sizzled in my stomach. "You remember how Opa always disappeared on full moons? Did you ever wonder why he did it? And why I started doing it right after he died?" It had been a while since I'd thought about this. I had just accepted it as part of life at a certain point, like a strange paternal family tradition. I had semi-forgotten my dad's odd habit of escaping the house on full moons. Looking back at his face, I was surprised by how many new wrinkles had formed around his eyes when I hadn't been paying attention. It occurred to me how often I looked at him without really looking at him. I always thought it was an excuse for you to get out with the guys, to go drinking or to the strip club or something. Some of my friends tried to convince me you were in a cult, but I told them that was ridiculous. I thought about whether or not I should say my last thought, and it slipped out anyways. A guy at college said you were probably in the mafia. I looked at his somber face and felt my chest grow tighter. Then he burst out laughing, breaking the tension. I laughed along with him, still feeling that stone of dread in my belly. "I'm not in a cult, or the mafia." "Okay, well, what is it then?" His face turned grave again. He took a sip of his drink. Then he took another and another. Finally, after several more long moments of silence, he stood up. "Let's go for a walk," he said. "You need to see it to believe it." I followed after him reluctantly. My father took me out to the woods behind his house, which led deep into a forested wilderness that stretched on for a long, long ways. There was no path, but he seemed to know exactly where he was going as he trudged through thick grass and brush, leading me deeper and deeper into the woods. "What the hell are we doing out here?" I asked him, slapping at a mosquito which landed on my neck, leaving a pool of blood on my palm. "You'll see," was all he would say. We walked for a long time, mostly without conversation, through the dark forest, far from the path. Finally, we reached my father's intended destination, a little clearing with a few logs situated around a fire pit. It was evening and sunset was an hour or so away. A full moon was waiting bloated behind the horizon. I glanced over and was alarmed to see a few chains attached to a tree nearby. My eyes traced down the length of them to a set of steel manacles. "Dad, what are those chains for?" I asked, getting scared. He must have heard the fear in my voice and tried to reassure me. "It's okay, son," he said, his eyes locked onto mine. "You know I would never hurt you in a million years, right?" I nodded. "Good. Now I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Can you trust me?" I nodded again, tears welling up in my eyes for reasons I didn't understand. "Listen, we have a bit of time. There's no big rush. That's why I brought you out here early. There's a few things I need to tell you, and some are going to be easier to believe than others, but they're all true. And when I ask you to, when I ask you to do what I need you to do, I need you to not ask any questions. I need you to just do it and trust me, okay? I guess, as long as it's not too crazy," I said, trying to keep it together. Just tell me already. I'm dying of suspense over here. He motioned for me to sit on one of the logs next to the fire pit. I did so, and he began to build a fire. Despite his age, he could still do it quicker than anyone I'd ever met. I watched him set a light, and it roared up in an instant inferno. He sat down on a log, and his eyes met mine again. My soul felt like it was leaving my body as he spoke his next words. I'm dying, son. It's the big C. I couldn't even respond. All I could do was sit there with my mouth hanging open, staring across the fire at him. The embers popped, and sparks flew into the air between us. It's in my colon, which means it's everywhere else too, according to the doctors. They did the tests, gave me a few options. Chemo and radiation will extend my life, probably, but no guarantees. And there will be side effects. I saw how that went with your grandmother, and I'm not going to go through that, which means I'm going to finish things au natural. I opened my mouth to speak, but he cut me off before I could say a word. It's my choice, so don't argue. They're giving me a few months at most, maybe less. I don't know how I'm going to look in a week or a month, and so I need to tell you all of this now while I still can. While my mind is still sharp, you understand? I was in shock, unsure of what to say. It wouldn't sink in for several more days, so at that moment I just stood up and gave him a big hug, squeezing him tight until he made a pained noise. For the first time, I noticed how thin he'd gotten lately. My arms used to have trouble making it all the way around his waist, but now I felt his ribs and the lack of a belly. Again, I'd been looking at him, but not really seeing him for a while. What else do you need to tell me? I said, after saying all of the other things that you say when someone you love tells you they're dying. It sounded important, whatever it was. About Opa, he nodded, looking solemn. Yeah, unfortunately, that's even worse news. I really don't want to tell you about this. I have no choice, though. You have to understand that I tried, and there is no way out of it. Like the cancer, it's a part of me. It's a part of us. Just remember, no matter what, that I tried. You don't need to go through that, okay? This is a curse, an irreversible one, that has been passed down to my side of the family and my side alone. Only the men are afflicted with it, never the women. We try to keep it from them so they don't have to live with the guilt and the pain that we do. I prayed for your mother to have a girl. You have to believe me. I prayed you would not be born into this. What are you talking about, Dad? The cancer? Are you saying that's some sort of family curse? That's crazy. I mean, genetics play a part, I'm sure. But it's not Dash. No, he cut me off. We can die from diseases just like any mortal. The stories are all wrong about that. We are merely men with a terrible curse. I waited for him to explain in plain English and hoped that eventually he would get around to it. The sun was drawing closer and closer to the horizon, and that felt like an important detail for some reason, like an hourglass running out of sand. He stood up and pointed to his belt. It was old, and I realized it was the same one my grandfather had worn. There is a silver wolf head which comprised the buckle. This belt is special, son. It holds an ancient power. It was passed down to me by my father, your Opa, and it was given to him by his father before him, going back for hundreds and hundreds of years. This belt is what gives us our power, but it also carries with it a great curse. I stared at him, wondering what the hell he could possibly be talking about. Just listen, he said, as if reading my mind. In about half an hour, you won't need to believe my words. You'll see it for yourself. It's a full moon tonight, Jason, and that means I'm going to turn into something else. A thing that's not quite a man and not quite a wolf. It's somewhere in between. What? I nearly screamed. That's insane. Dad, this is all nuts. I thought maybe the cancer was affecting his mind. What other reason could there be for such a bizarre lie? Instead of debating with me, he just continued as if I hadn't spoken. This belt is a symbol of our power, but it is more than that. It carries with it our strength and our curse. If you should ever lose it, it will haunt you. Every death you see on the news will be your burden to bear. for you have forsaken your sworn duty. The dead will come to you in your dreams, and you will never truly rest again. Hear my words, son, and remember them. I sat back down on the wooden log, landing hard on my ass and nearly toppling it over. Dad, come on. You're kidding me, right? Is this a joke? He shook his head. I wish it was, son, but it's very real, and I'm going to prove it to you. No, Dad, you don't have to do that. I yelled, but he ignored me. He stood up and walked over to the tree where chains and manacles were attached. I followed after him, running to catch up. Despite his age, he could still move quickly, and the fire he had started was still roaring behind us, and I had no concerns about tending it to keep it going. It was blazing high, and he had already stacked a pile of wood nearby to feed it, as if planning to stay here for a while. Or maybe it occurred to me he was thinking that I would want to stay for a while here with him. I can lock these ones, but I need you to do the last one, my father said, putting the handcuffs around his ankles and wrists. He snapped them shut and locked them with a key. I noticed they hung loosely around his wrists, and he could easily escape them. But maybe, just maybe, a voice in my mind said he would grow into them. Come on, we're running out of time, he said, and I noticed for the first time that the sun had set and it would be dark soon. It was twilight now, and there was very little light remaining. An orange full moon was cresting large on the horizon. Normally I would argue with him, but I could tell he was serious and would be very upset if I tried. Feeling numb, I went over to the steel bracelet on his left wrist and locked it with the key he handed me. Then I stood back, surveying the strange scene. Mosquitoes were buzzing and landing on my neck, and I slapped at them, wishing I brought bug spray. They were landing on my dad too, but he didn't seem to notice them. This is going to get ugly, he said. Whatever I do, don't try to help me. Don't try to assist me in any way. It's going to look like I'm in pain, and I'm going to be in some pain, but it will only last for a short while, and then I'll be myself again. I opened my mouth to say something and closed it again. What the hell could I say? Dad, you don't have to do this, I tried. Whatever is happening to you, I'm sure it's not Dash. A noise interrupted my speech, and I realized that it was the sound of clothing being torn. It was his shirt. The skin underneath was bulging and growing like a tumorous lump, but then it smoothed out and spread, turning into a growing ripple of muscle. It stretched down the length of his left arm, hairs bristling out from his skin along the way, following the path of its growth. His left arm now fit snugly in the handcuff, which I had assumed was too large for him. He winced and bared his teeth from a sudden pain, letting out a low noise. I reached forwards to put my hand on his shoulder. Get back, he roared, and his voice sounded different now, lower and thicker like the growl of a dog. I stumbled backwards, startled and terrified, and tripped over a branch. Landing hard on my back, my head whipped into a rock and bounced up and down a couple times before settling in the dirt. Pain bloomed back there, and I saw stars explode throughout the darkness of my vision. It's possible I passed out momentarily, or for more than a few minutes. When I opened my eyes, all I could think about was the sharp ache in the back of my skull. I reached back to feel the warmth of blood on my hand, and held it up to my face to see how bad it was, but it was too dark to tell. I looked down to see my head had collided with a rock which was embedded into the forest floor. The stars were out in the night sky above, but they were not as visible due to the brightness of the full moon and the canopy of swaying tree branches above. Struggling to rise to my feet, I looked to see a creature which appeared to be a werewolf chained to a tree nearby. It stood on its hind legs, flexing and straining against the chains which bound it to the tree. It snapped its teeth and fixed its eyes on me. The dirt at the base of the tree buckled and crunched as if he might lift the whole thing out from the dirt, but the roots held firm, and a second later the creature relaxed slightly, its snout sniffing at the air, smelling my blood on the wind. Dad, I whispered, moving closer to it. Is that really you? Are you still in there? The creature standing on two legs was covered in thick, wiry fur, gray streaked with white, just like my dad's beard. And when I looked into his eyes, I could see something familiar there, a glimmer in them. But then the beast was snapping its jaws and aggressively growling at me, pulling on its chains as it tried to break free once again. It was too much to look at, too much to bear after the news I had been given. All of this was too much. It was making me feel sick just thinking about how much my life had changed in a few short hours. I slowly backed away and went towards the fire, grateful when the sound of growling began to recede and eventually went away altogether, drowned out by the crackling of the flames and the wind in the trees. The bonfire was guttering, despite my dad's excellent construction of it. I got the feeling I'd been out for a while, judging by the moon and the stars in the sky above. At least it was still going enough that I could coax it back to life. I fed a few more logs onto it and some smaller kindling beneath that, then began to blow on the embers until the dry wood caught alight. Within a few minutes, it was roaring again, and I was holding my hands up to the blaze to warm them. They were still shaking, and my teeth were still chattering from fear and shock, but I was starting to settle down a little bit. My father was a werewolf. It didn't seem real, but there it was. There he was. All I needed to do was look over at him to confirm I wasn't dreaming. This was real. I decided to dig around in my dad's bag to see if he'd brought anything to drink. Sure enough, there were hot dogs and cold soda, just waiting for me to find them. Cracking one open, I glanced at my dad, the Dogman, out of the corner of my eye. He had settled back against the tree, as if resigned to his fate, but I thought I could sense an occasional movement, as if he were still testing the restraints. Something else caught my eye at the bottom of the bag, and I took it out to examine it in the light of the fire. Journal, the cover of the book read. A sticky note was attached to the front of it, which I pulled off to read in the light. Hope this helps. Dad, it was his journal, I realized, and he wanted me to read it. I opened it and began to read from the first page, as my father struggled and growled in his chains a little ways away. Still trembling with terror, I held the pages close to the fire and began to read, hoping to learn the secrets of my family's curse. Instead, what I found was a record of my father's life, and a startling picture of what my own grim existence would soon look like. January 10th, 2001. It finally happened. For years he warned me, and yet still I was not prepared for this. How could anyone hope to be prepared for this? Those people, so many died by my own hands. The newspaper called it an animal attack, and that is not too far from the truth. When I am in that form, I am all instinct and anger, completely unable to form rational thoughts. That does not excuse my lack of preparation. My father told me to prepare, but I used my grief as an excuse to forget. I will go to hell for the things I have done. There is no doubt in my mind about that. Heaven has no place for a man who can tear apart a woman with his bare teeth. Next time I'll be more careful. For the next few weeks, I will need to devise a plan. I will need to speak to Uncle Horace. He promised to help me, but I do not know how he will manage to do so if he suffers from the same affliction. Still, at the very least, he may be able to give me some advice. Until next time, GH. I read a few more pages, then realized the fire needed to be fed, and stood up to grab more wood. As soon as I did, I heard a loud, growling noise from behind me, where my father was chained to the tree. He pulled against the restraints again, and I thought I saw something crack. A piece of the tree splintering and coming loose. But then he settled back again, and I realized it was nothing of consequence. Just a piece of bark that had come loose. Or so I thought. Asterisk. After stoking the fire and letting it burn for a while, warming my hands against the heat of the flames, I settled back into reading. February 9th, 2001. It worked. The chains held fast, and the manacles were large enough to keep my wrists secure without injuring myself. My arms are sore and my shoulders ache, but at least my conscience is clean, knowing I did everything in my power to prevent disaster. Damn this belt. I wish I could get rid of it. I wish I could just throw it in the ocean and let the tide take it away. But Uncle Horace warned me not to. If I do, then someone else will find it. And who knows what they might do with this power if left unchecked? The world would be safer without us in it. GH. It was sad to think that my father had help, but I would have none. If this condition was really passed on to me, I would be the last one in our family to be afflicted with it. I had no kids and wasn't planning on having any. And my great-uncle Horace and all of the other men in my family had passed away. I was the last man in the Hamburg line, and that meant the family secret would die with me, assuming I could keep it a secret. It also meant that once my father passed away, there would be no one around to help me with this curse. No one to guide me like Uncle Horace had guided him. The journal I was holding was all I had, aside from the advice of my father, and he didn't have much time left by the sounds of it. Something made a loud cracking sound in the forest behind me, and I stood up and turned around. I saw the vague outline of a person, just a smudge of shadow among the trees, and then heard the air whistling behind me as something large and heavy came swinging at my head. I don't remember it hitting me, only the pain I felt afterwards. Asterisk. The fire was in front of me when I blinked my eyes open, but the flames were blurry and ill-defined. My head was spinning and my ears were ringing as I tried to focus on the man in front of me who was speaking. He snapped his fingers once, twice, 3 times, as if trying to get me to pay attention. There we go. Wakey, wakey, he said, grinning. Nice job, fellow hunter. Sorry to blindside you like that, but we had to be sure. Rumor has it there are some sick freaks around here who are friendly with these creatures. I groaned, trying to form words. Who are you? I looked around to see more men nearby, all dressed in camouflage. Hunters, he said. Dogman hunters. Shit. I looked over to where my dad was chained up. There were 2 men taking pictures of him with their cell phones while he growled and snapped his teeth at them. Nowhere near as accomplished as you, though, the man's friend said. I've seen a few of them, but never caught one and chained it up. Damn, dude, how'd you manage that? I tried to think up a lie. My head was still spinning, though, and I was having trouble thinking straight. Hey, Dave, check this out, one of the guys near my father said, pointing at the belt around his waist. I stood up on shaky legs and wandered over to join the group of them. Yeah, it's weird he was wearing that belt when I found him. I muttered, trying to think of what words to say on the fly. How'd you manage to subdue this beast, brother? One of the men asked. He was tall, with a long black beard, wearing plaid and a black jacket. Almost looks like a prior arrangement to me. The group of them turned to look at me suspiciously. A prior arrangement? I asked. What's that even mean? This brought more murmurs from the group, and I heard a few unkind whispers about my true allegiance. Where's your gear? Your rifle and all your equipment? A louder grumbling began to rise up from the men, as a few of them began to move towards me. Is this your journal? A voice from behind me asked, reading through it aloud. All of my family secrets suddenly being spoken out into the world for this whole group of men to hear. He's one of them, someone said. We can't let him go. He's a leakin', a beast from hell. 2 of them grabbed me from behind while the one holding the journal marched over, waving the book in his hand. I asked you a question, he said, smacking me on the forehead with the leather-bound book. Is this yours? I stared at him defiantly, the whole time watching my father out of the corner of my eye. He was still pulling on the restraints, testing them, straining against them with all of his might. The tree was bending against his efforts, the trunk splintering and cracking. My father's, I spat, looking behind him fully now, at the creature chained to the tree. It belongs to my father. There was grumbling amongst the group members, and then finally one of them spoke up loudly. We'll kill them both. Even if he's not one of them yet, he's got it in his blood. It's only a matter of time before he goes through the transformation. Grab him. Don't let him get away. I turned to run, but it was too late. They were already on me. One of the men tackled me, pinning me to the ground while another approached with a pistol. He cocked it, then aimed at my head. Silver bullets, mate. Made and myself. The cold steel of the barrel was pressed up against my forehead, digging into my skin. Any last words, Leakin? I tried to speak, but all that came out was a whimper. I wasn't ready to die. There was so much more I wanted to do in life. All of my dreams and plans for the future, all of my brightest memories and the faces of my loved ones flashed before my eyes. And I waited for the bullet that would end my life. Guess not. I felt the man tense up as he was about to pull the trigger. And then something broke. A loud crack erupted from nearby. Chains rattled and shook. Steel snapped, and then there was screaming from all around. I opened my eyes to look around and saw a bloodbath. The men who had been surrounding me were being slaughtered by a gray streak that moved faster than anything I'd seen before. It was a blur of movement, stopping for a second to disembowel a hunter, then swiftly moving on to the next. Blood erupted into the air to my left, and then my right, a fountain, a geyser, as men's throats were ripped out and their arms detached, and they tried to fight back ineffectually. It was like watching ants try to fight against a man. They stood no chance. The man who had been ready to shoot me was the last one alive. He held his gun with both hands, trying to keep it steady in his trembling hands. Each time the creature paused, he tensed up and got ready to fire. But an instant later, it was moving again, a blur streaking through the air, reappearing somewhere else before he could get shot off. I realized the creature was toying with him as the beast grinned, showing its many long, sharp teeth. When he finally did manage to shoot at the beast, each bullet missed wild. He backed away, stumbling and falling over a tree trunk. The man crab-walked backwards, trying to find the gun he had dropped among the fallen leaves. The giant wolf creature came toward him, growling low and deep. "Stay back," the man shouted, finding his gun. "I'll shoot you. Get back. Get back." He pulled the trigger again. It fired once, then made several dry, clicking noises as he continued to squeeze the trigger, the revolver empty. The creature lunged at him. The man's screams were loud and awful, and I turned my head away so I wouldn't be forced to watch. Eventually he was quiet and could no longer make a noise. For a few minutes all I could hear was the wet sounds of blood being spilled and teeth working to chew through muscle and bone. When I opened my eyes and looked up, there was the face of a large wolf in front of me, staring right at me. I couldn't help but notice those teeth, long and white, coming to points that could crush a skull. For a moment I thought I would die, that this form of my father would not recognize me. Its giant, bloody maw came down towards me, and I cringed backwards, the smell of coppery entrails wafting out from its gullet. But instead of teeth snapping shut on my face, a soft, oversized tongue licked my cheek. And then the warmth of an enormous dog settled down on the forest floor beside me. His breathing was too fast and too heavy, I realized as I felt the warmth of blood soaking through my shirt. The hunter's last bullet had gotten him. I saw the wound as I sat up to look at him beside me. His eyes were wide and locked with mine, his mouth open and panting. "Dad? No." I stroked the soft fur of his cheeks and pressed my face against his. I kissed his forehead and watched as he closed his eyes and his breathing slowed, then stopped. After long, while I stood up to find a bloodbath all around me, dead hunters whose families and friends would soon be looking for them. I threw their phones into the blazing fire, hoping the pictures they had taken of my father had not been uploaded to the cloud. I looked down to see the journal had been burnt to embers in the fire. The hunter had dropped it into the blaze before he was torn to shreds. One last insult, one last attack, I had nothing left to show me the way now. I went back home to get a shovel and began to dig. It took a long, long time to make a pit big enough to bury all those bodies. When I was done, I felt exhausted, but I knew there was still more to do. I took my dad's belt and fixed it around my waist, sending it through the loops of my pants, and then looking down at the silver wolf head on the buckle. As I reached down to pick up my father's lifeless corpse, now human again, I found I had more strength than ever before. His body weighed almost nothing. I knew how to get home, and I'd carry my father back to see the crying eyes of my mother waiting at the door, as if she had known all along. Asterisk, it's been almost a month since all this happened. My dad's funeral was a couple weeks back, and it surprised me again how little of my family is left still alive. No men were there to see him off. Only the women of the family remain. They complimented me on how well I was handling everything, how mature I'd become, and they said how good I look wearing my father's old belt, that ancient family heirloom which nobody wants, as if it's cursed. I have no one to help me now, no one to guide me, but I've been preparing for the next full moon. I found a sturdy tree, bigger than the last, deeper in the wilderness of the forest, and I've fixed it with manacles and thick steel chains. I'm watching the calendar, ready for the next full moon. I'm terrified of what will come next, but after reading my father's journal, I refuse to make the same mistake he did. I may be a monster now, but I will not allow myself to turn into a cold-blooded killer, unless I chance upon another Dogman hunter, wandering alone in the forest. Fourth story. My life was saved by a Dogman hunter. I was heading back into town with my buddy Joe after spending the weekend out on a frozen lake, ice fishing, and drinking beer. The fish were really biting, too. Joe's SUV was stuffed to the gills with walleye and smallmouth bass. The northerly town of Kapuskasing was buried under a mountain of snow, the worst snowfall since the winter of '97. I've lived my entire life in northern Ontario, so I've seen my fair share of snow, but nothing like this. But you learn to expect the unexpected in northern Ontario. We were heading over a steep incline, enjoying a generous backdrop of pine trees painted in freshly fallen snow, when tragedy struck. We watched as 2 police helicopters landed on the small slice of highway, causing the trickles of traffic to grind to a halt. Not a good sign. This highway was the only road home. We later learned that a newlywed couple had collided with a transport truck, killing both the husband and wife. We were forced to turn around and head back over the hill, where we found ourselves driving through a modest-sized hamlet consisting of one-stop sign, a gas station/motel/restaurant, plus a smattering of wartime houses. Except all you could see was the pointed rooftops. The houses were completely submerged in snow. It was an incredible sight, something you only see this far up north. And even then, this was rare. Joe didn't want to stick around, waiting a good 12 hours for the road to clear. He had a wife and kids to get home to, so we pulled over, wondering what our next move should be. Joe had that look in his eye, the look he gets when he's about to do something dangerous or stupid, or both. I know this look well. Hand tight, he said, and hold on. We turned onto a crude version of a road, the kind designated for snowmobiles, with stop signs standing a mere 3 feet tall. The road was extremely narrow. Snowbanks as high as trees were towering over us like large, looming walls of white. If anything were to approach, we'd have nowhere to go. There wasn't enough room to turn around. I was becoming increasingly uneasy. This is how people get hurt. Or worse, are you sure this is safe? I asked, hating the sound of my voice. Joe ignored me, or simply didn't hear me. He was busy white-knuckling the minivan through the snow-tunneled trail, the glare of the setting sun blinding us the entire time. We drove for 15 minutes, knifing our way along the icy road, which was bumpier than a wooden roller coaster. It was obvious that we shouldn't be here. The impending darkness didn't improve my mood one bit, either. I had a bad feeling about this. Joe stopped the van. "What's up?" I asked, not trusting the look on his face. Joe didn't answer. I could see his mind at work, assessing the direness of our situation. "I've got to turn this thing around somehow," he finally said. I couldn't see how this was possible, as we were sandwiched between two colossal snowbanks. Something flickered inside Joe's dark eyes. "What's that up ahead?" he asked, flashing on high beams. "I think it's a road." It was. We edged a bit further, stopping at this makeshift road. There were no signs or road markings to be seen. Nothing. In fact, this road looked worse than the one we were on. "Let's see where it goes," Joe said, cranking the wheel. As the minivan lumbered down the unmarked road, an ominous feeling swept over me. It was impossible to ignore. We were in trouble. There was no denying it. We were completely off the grid. Not even Google Maps could save us. There was only one way to go, straight. The road was leading us into the dark of the forest. And when you're this far north, that's never a good idea. Especially at night. That's when the wolves come out. It was looking to be a moonless night, which didn't help us one bit. Joe's hands were quivering as he clenched the wheel, keeping us from skidding into the towering snowbank. He kept assuring me we'd be all right, but I've heard that one before. Joe slammed on the brakes. "You see that?" He pointed. "Over there." I squinted my eyes. "Look," he said. "Fire." Deep into the forest, I spotted a small, flickering flame, dancing blue and orange and yellow and wild. Probably a campfire. Just then, a strange and disturbing sound crackled through the night like a howling wolf. "You hear that?" he asked. The animal cried out again. It was the loneliest yowl I'd ever heard. There it goes again. It sounded like a wolf, except it didn't sound like any wolf I'd heard before, and I've heard plenty. Whatever it was dangerously close. "Wolf," I said nervously, but not believing it. As soon as those words left my mouth, a pair of glowing red eyes appeared out of nowhere. Joe stopped the car and killed the lights. "Be still," he said. I did just that. I sat motionless beside him in the car, but my hands were shaking. Those laser red eyes were approaching an impossible speed. "Reach back and grab the gun," Joe whispered. I tried, but it was out of reach. They were on his side, closer to the back. Those glowing eyes flashed on and off, and for a moment everything was still. Then from out of nowhere the beast lunged onto the hood of the van. "A-H-H-H-H!" we screamed in unison. The thing was huge, unlike any animal I'd ever seen. It looked like an overgrown German shepherd, except it was standing on its hind legs, like a human. It was snarling at us, making ungodly noises, thrashing about. The creature was long and gangly, frothing at the mouth, clearly rabid. "Dogman," Joe said, clearly astonished. "I don't believe it." Joe gunned it, looking to run the thing over and speed away, but the wheels were caught on ice. Without warning, the beast leapt off the hood and started scratching at my door, its claws like daggers, tearing the door from its hinges. It smashed through the windshield, shattering it into a million pieces. With its dog-like face twisted in rage, the thing took a swipe at me. Its long, toothy claws just inches from ripping my eyeballs from their sockets. The SUV shook, spilling the cooler of dead fish. The smell was atrocious. The Dogman disagreed. Before it could rip apart my throat with its curvy claws, the creature turned from me and trampled to the back of the van, where it devouring the fish in seconds flat. Its muzzle turned blood red. Watching it lick the fish guts from its paws was sickening. This isn't how I wanted to die. The Dogman's razor-sharp teeth were on full display. The insidious brute seemed hell-bent on killing us both. We were, in fact, the main course. It took a tentative step toward us, licking its filthy face. I gave Joe a look that said, "Nice knowing you, pal," when out of nowhere came an ear-ringing blast, striking the creature in the shoulder. The thing screamed in protest. Then came another shot, hitting the beast square in the chest. Blood and gore spilled like wine across the interior of the SUV. "Someone's shooting at it," Joe proclaimed. 3 more shots rang out. The creature snarled, wiped the fleshy cartilage from its bloodied face, then attacked. Bang! The shot went wide, but it was enough to send the beast scurrying back into the woods. "Holy hell," Joe said in a shaky voice. Without a second thought, he pulled his seat back as far as it could go, then shimmied his way into the back of the van and grabbed the gun. "We're going to need this." All of a sudden, it was freezing. With the vehicle off and the windshield busted in, it was an igloo inside the van. "It's getting cold in here," I said, shaking uncontrollably. A large plume of steam escaped from my face as I spoke. I was in shock. I had no idea what that thing was, but it damn near killed me. The scene inside of the minivan was that out of a horror movie. The smell was even worse. I tried opening the door, but it wouldn't budge. Joe tried his door with the same results. We were stuck. I'd sliced myself to shreds before I got halfway through my windshield. Joe's door had a bullet hole where the handle should be. We'd have to escape through the back. Blood and guts and fish bones and all. It was gruesome, but we did it. Once outside, I scanned the area, searching for that dog creature that almost killed me, but it had vanished. Joe's shotgun was aimed at a speck of light approaching from straight ahead. A car. Within minutes, we were greeted by a Volkswagen microbus. It stopped directly in front of us. The driver got out and ran toward us carrying a sniper rifle, wearing a belt of ammunition. He spoke fast and with purpose, checking his surrounding while doing so. "You saw it? You did, didn't you? Excellent. Which way to go, by the way?" This guy made Clint Eastwood look like a Boy Scout. I honestly thought he was going to kill us. He frowned as he surveyed the scene. Then he shrugged. "I suppose you'll be needing my help." He ran to the bus and opened up the hatch, exposing an array of military-style weapons to the likes I'd only seen in the movies. "Holy hell," Joe said, clearly impressed. I remained quiet, unsure what to make of this heavily armed, red-headed stranger who literally just appeared out of nowhere to save our lives. But there seemed to be no other choice. Whoever he was, he drove us back to his cottage, regaling us with the history of this Dogman creature. He told us some pretty tall tales. His name was Patrick. Apparently, he's a Dogman hunter. He says he's never captured one, but claims to have seen 4 or 5, wounding 2 of them. Pesky bastards, he says. Hard to kill. He'd been hunting the one that attacked us for weeks. Apparently, it's been mutilating deer and coyotes, as well as regular cats and dogs all winter long, leaving their salvage remains scattered along the sides of the road and in people's backyards. The locals were starting to panic. Joe and I texted home, then we stayed up all night talking about Dogman. I was having a hard time coming to grips with all this, seeing as how I almost died at the hands of one of them. Joe, on the other hand, was enthralled. The next day we drove back to the SUV to inspect the damage. When we arrived, the van was completely dismantled and destroyed. It lay in ruins. Everything inside it had been ravaged and plundered. "This isn't right," Patrick said. "There must be an explanation." We scanned the surrounding area for over an hour and came up empty-handed. A fresh blanket of snow had fallen overnight, making finding next to impossible. The disappointment on Patrick's face was palpable. Reluctantly, we hopped into his microbus and he drove us home with our tails between our legs, where we arrived a day late and short one SUV. We stayed in touch with Patrick going forward. Joe, coming from a long lineage of seasoned hunters, was intrigued by this Dogman creature. Naturally, I was skeptical. I'm fairly certain that beast meant to eat me. The last thing I wanted to do was volunteer to go searching for it. Yet, unbeknownst to me, this was the making of a team of hunters, Dogman hunters. Still, amidst all the excitement, a feeling of trepidation had stolen over me. There was a lesson to be learned from all of this, a lesson lost on my gun-toting counterparts. Some roads are best untraveled, especially in northern Ontario, where anything can happen and usually does. Fifth story. A strange encounter in the woods. I'm a skeptic of the supernatural, but I believe anything is possible, so I won't discount supernatural occurrences if I can't find a logical explanation for them. I have a few incidences that I have witnessed, but couldn't explain. I'm only going to tell the one that freaked me out the most, though. So here it goes. I live in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, USA. A lot of people in the cities have cabins in either northern MN or rural Wisconsin. Our cabin was in northern Wisconsin, a small town called Danbury. The cabin is on Long Lake at the very end of Long Lake Road. Along with the cabin came almost an acre of land of thick forest. We carved a trail trough the land for ATVs and whatnot. So the scene is set. Now about me. I'm an outdoor enthusiast, have been forever. I'm 6 feet 4 inches and fit, and have been a hunter since I was like 12. I know my environment well, I know the wildlife, I know the forest well, and am typically comfortable in the woods. I come from a military family and am trained in multiple forms of combat, armed and unarmed, and I have extensive firearms training. As a result, I am fairly confident in my abilities to defend myself. I'm not really scared of people. Big predators, on the other hand, I'm not a big fan of bears, wolves, man-bear pig, whatever. This brings me to the weirdness. I'm 23 now, but at the time of the incident I was 16. Even at 16, I was a decent hunter, and I generally have good common sense. Anyway, I was at the cabin with my cousin Jay and grandparents. It is middle summer, I think July, hot temps and whatnot. Me and my cousin were shooting at each other with airsoft guns. We had a full-on 1v1 battle going on throughout the property, including the woods, which were my stalking grounds, as I was wearing my BDU with face cover and all, head to toe in camo. Our battle ended up about 100 yards northwest of the cabin into the woods. We ended the war on the main trail and were standing and talking about the events that conspired, and I was still on guard because I always am. I suppose I could be considered a tad paranoid. All right, so we were talking. When I noticed something moved on our 12 about 50 meters out, I got quiet and focused dead ahead scanning. Jay was still talking, and I whispered, he shut up. And to freak him out, I said we're being watched as a joke because I figured the movement I caught was probably a bird or something. But then I did notice something. It's dead quiet, no bird chirping, nothing. Then I started to think, this only happens when a big predator is around. So I started looking even closer. Then I saw it. On my 12, there was a large animal. It had reddish-brown fur and almost blended in perfectly till I focused on it. It had long front limbs, arm-like, with formidable claws that appeared. It was standing kind of slouched down against a tree like it was trying to be stealthy. It was nearly as tall as me in this state. The only reason why I saw it was because of its teeth. I think it was panting because its whitish teeth were visible. Its snout appeared to be a tad elongated. I couldn't get a better look because my first thought was, we have to go, I said out loud. Jay was already freaked when I said that he bolted up the trail towards the cabin. He nearly left me in the dust because I was protective of him, and I waited a good 3 seconds and kept my eye on it until I saw it move, and it was fast. Then I ran like hell. I didn't see which way it ran. All I know is I heard it crashing through the woods. Jay stopped at the shed to wait for me, which was still 50 meters from the cabin. When I caught up, I yelled, "Go, go, go." And we both bolted to the cabin and got inside and shut the door. Then my grandma asked why we looked panicked and slammed the door. I knew they wouldn't believe me, so I said we saw a bear, and Jay nodded. Later that night, after the grandparents went to sleep, we talked about it, and I asked Jay if he saw it. He told me that he paused for a second to look back after he ran to see if I was running with him, and he saw me still looking at it. Then he saw it move too and me run. But mostly he said he only saw a flash of fur. He then said I thought it wasn't the right color for a bear. I told him it wasn't. We only have black bears in the area, and the animal wasn't built right. I said I didn't think it was a bear. He then asked why I lied. I told him they wouldn't believe us. We have kept it between us until now. Still, the animal didn't match any known regional animal profiles in the area. I'm at a loss for what it may have been. I know that it was stalking us, though, and that it was built like an athletic predator, not like a bear, not as heavy set. After the incident, neither of us would go into the woods on foot alone without a gun. We generally only went back in the woods on ATVs from that point forward. I always loved the cabin up until then. Fortunately, the cabin has been sold now. TLDR. Saw a strange predator in the forest at my cabin. Asterisk asterisk. Thanks a lot for watching this video till the end. Drop your suggestions in the comment section.